Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. It's a delight to be back together again here on a spring Sunday. And this temple is a branch of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And the words, or the phrase, Krishna Consciousness, if one has heard it several times, if not hundreds or thousands, from saying International Society for Krishna Consciousness or just being around those who speak about it, it may sound ordinary, but it's not. What's most extraordinary about the world, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, is us, because we are the conscious part of the universe. There's an unconscious part, which is the inert material energy. But what animates it is us. And what animates us is Krishna, who's our source. And as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna is a person. He's fully conscious and he's fully independent. Krishna consciousness is our original consciousness. And just as when a drop of water falls from the sky, it's in a pure form. But when it touches the muddy earth, it can become mixed with the dirt on the ground and take on a different look and feel altogether. In a similar way, when we as pure consciousness and part of Krishna come in contact with the material elements, which are described as separated energies, they're part of Krishna because everything's part of Krishna. He's the source of everything and everyone, but he has superior and inferior energies. In touch with the inferior energy, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, we can become affected by it. He says, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sadasad yoni janmasu. That as soon as we contact material energy and become absorbed in it, then there's a cycle of cause and effect that takes place. And it's as if we've become material ourselves. I accept that I am this body. I also accept that I have to work very hard in this world. I also accept that I have to die at a certain point. And I go on with what is called in the Bhagavad Gita a hard struggle for existence. But in our original consciousness, life is not a struggle. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivam jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana manakshastan indriyani prakristani karshati. That as parts of Krishna, when we come in contact with the material energy, then a very hard struggle ensues. It's us grappling with the material energy. Just over the last few days, when my wife Nirkula and I had gone to a natural area, we saw some signposts about various animals that live in the area. And it was noticeable that there's a hierarchy within nature, that one living being is food for another. And that's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Ahastani sahastanam apadani tushpadam palgani tatramahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. Jiva means a living being, and jivo jivasya jivanam means there's a way in which one living being is food for another. There's the insects who are plentiful, and whose lifespan we noticed by observing the environment where we were can be very short, because there were quite a few arachnids, aka spiders, who had set up little shops in the trees. And you could see in the sunlight multiple spider webs perfectly designed, by the way, without a degree from Caltech, Georgia Tech, or MIT. And the insects, many of whom seem to have been fairly recently born, found their way into those webs and were consumed. And then, of course, as we were near an estuary, which means a place where the ocean meets freshwater river, there's a sign that describes what most of the animals in that area eat. And it's primarily fish. Fish are consumed by everybody. Every kind of bird and other animals who can get a paw or a beak within the water eat fish. And in the realm of nature in this world, there's a struggle going on just to survive. To eat, one has to consume other living beings because that is the law of nature. And from the way we live in this world and take the lives of others just to survive, then there's a debt to pay. And this cycle goes onward, on, until one comes to the human form of life where there's an opportunity to question what the purpose of life is. It's very noticeable if you look at nature as well, that animals are not accustomed to philosophical discussions. If you've ever brought up the topic of philosophy with your pet, if you have one, he or she may not be interested. And this is in resonance with what the ancient wisdom literatures say, and that is that humans and animals are the same. They're also spiritual souls within particular bodies. There's only one difference, and that is that the human apparatus, human body, is equipped for self-realization and God realization, and can inquire about God and can take steps to come closer to God, whereas animals don't have the wherewithal to do that. Although I noticed the church near us has a time in which every year they bless animals, which I think is very nice, that you bring your pet in for a blessing. Nonetheless, I don't see on a weekly basis that pets line up outside the church to get a seat, nor have any pets knowingly entered our temple here to attend a class. The human life is especially meant for self-realization. And in fact, without that endeavor, the ancient wisdom literature, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, mentions that humans can't feel satisfied. Maslow, in his hierarchy of needs, describes how there are some basics we need to cover for shelter and foodstuff and a sense of community. But on his pyramid of needs, there's a point at which, when you have the basics covered, there's not a sense of satisfaction from adding more. So if I was wealthy and I was able to get 2 houses instead of one maybe in Montana and the other one maybe here in Silicon Valley, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be happier, for it's difficult to consume the material energy and feel satisfied by it, because the material energy is in many cases beautiful. If you look at the scenes of nature, it's hard to actually get full satisfaction from them. We can get a sense of peace in peaceful environments, but it doesn't fully satisfy us. Similarly, even in the arts, if you go to a museum, you may feel some inspiration from the creativity. Or if you hear a beautiful musical concert, you may be similarly inspired. But there's not a sense of complete satisfaction. There's a way that Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the guiding light for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, along with the Bhagavad Gita, says that the soul has a higher need. The soul is more subtle than the body, and the body's interaction is with the material elements. However, there are more subtle ways to interact with the world, but not just this world, with the spiritual world. And that's through coming in contact with a spiritual sound. And therefore, the beginning of the practice of bhakti yoga is to hear the sound vibration which is above the material world. And from that, one can satisfy the soul and feel a kind of satisfaction that one doesn't get anywhere else in this world. Not by accumulating or hoarding or finding a comfortable place to live or even a compatible partner in this world. All these elements are important in various ways, but not completely or ultimately satisfying. The Srimad Bhagavatam says they're necessary to live a balanced life, but the purpose of living that balanced life is so that one can devote oneself to hearing about the spiritual world and to hear vibrations that are beyond the mundane. So a question arises in the Srimad Bhagavatam, how might one hear such vibrations? Because when I'm describing them, it sounds as if you're using the same ears that you would to hear, and I didn't disparage hearing a musical concert, I just said it won't give you ultimate satisfaction, which I guess is a kind of damnation by faint praise. But there's a way in which we use the same ears to hear spiritual sound as we do to hear what we might call mundane sound, or sound that's related to the temporal world. So how is it that we can actually hear those sounds from the spiritual world? How can they be appreciable to us? And how might they transform us? This topic comes up in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In a chapter called Prayers by the Personified Vedas, it's chapter 87 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there, the simple answer is given is that material nature and we ourselves are under the purview of a higher intelligence. And we can experience this higher intelligence ourselves by noticing that we are trying to find out about various aspects of the world, and in our inquiries and in our studies, we're at first helpless, but then we gain insight by getting higher intelligence. For instance, if you're working on a problem and you don't know the answer, there's not much you can do about it except for consult ChatGPT, which is noticeably indicative of a higher intelligence. In fact, it's one of the warnings that some of the early pioneers of AI had mentioned, and that is that we may become overly dependent on such information. But there is a sense when asking questions that, oh, you know more and a lot more than I do, and have access to more information than I do. It would take me all day to answer this one question by doing independent searches, but you've answered it in one fell swoop. And In a similar way, we might also notice that there's an intelligence that comes to us naturally when we're finding our way through this world, solving problems, or just driving down the freeway. How do we have the wherewithal to miss other cars or to stay in the lane? And I always wonder that about how this body holds together. How do all the organs coordinate with one another? And how is it that there's a schedule that we can count on in the universe, meaning that sun rises at a particular time and you can predict when it's going to go down because it's on a schedule. All this indicates an overarching intelligence within the universe, and we can also perceive it within ourselves by the ways in which our inquiries are answered, our studies are fulfilled. And it's not as if we did it by our own endeavor. Although the endeavor is there, we're dependent on more information coming to us, as has been expressed by many who have had breakthrough experiences in studying, when they said that although they had no idea, for instance, what the polio vaccine might be, and then it came as a formula, and a very clear one at that, that the sense of higher intelligence came into play. And the prayers, or the Vedas, which are the axiomatic literatures which give direction to people who want to live in balance in this life and also to attain spiritual perfection. They're also described in the Srimad Bhagavatam as being personified. That is, that they can speak for themselves. And in this chapter, as they're discussing how it is that one can perceive higher intelligence, and beyond that, the source of that intelligence, which we call the Supreme Being, is because the Supreme Being can reveal himself to us. And one may say, well, how would that be possible? We may answer by saying, how would it not be possible? Because by the very definition of the Supreme Being, one would have to assume that such a being could do anything. And if you say, well, there's a limitation, then you're not talking by definition about a Supreme Being. And therefore the personified Vedas say that they advocate a personalist idea, and that is that the universe is a very personally designed environment, in that it's responsive to us. Everything that happens in this world has a cause, and there's an effect of that cause. And in our lives, everything is arranged within the framework of this perfectly designed universe. The Sri Upanishad gives this very reassuring statement that the universe is perfect, and everything that happens to us is perfectly arranged by that perfect universe. And behind that perfect universe, there's a perfect intelligence. And there's a further development of this thought in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is that perfect intelligence is a perfectly intelligent person. And that perfectly intelligent person is our friend. So that's good news. And the prayers personified Vedas say, as a friend, the Supreme Absolute is eager to facilitate our upward trajectory in this lifetime, and can arrange through the energies of this world to support us on our spiritual quest. In the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, Krishna says, Tesham satata yuktanam vachatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. This verse, if you really think about it, could change your way of thinking and living. You might reorganize everything in your life just based on this one verse. Because what it says is, well, I will rephrase that. I said what it says is, what Krishna says in this verse, he's speaking for himself directly in the Bhagavad Gita, is that I'm with you. I'm for you. And when you turn your intelligence toward me voluntarily, then I'll reciprocate in kind. He mentions this several times in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a decidedly devotional literature. It leads to a conclusion that God is for us, He's with us, and He's eager for us to inquire from Him and ask the question of what is the way in which I can see you, I can connect to you, I can develop my relationship with you. Knowing that, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. Manuvartante manusha parta sarvasha. There's two parts of this verse. One is that Krishna says, as you interact with me, as you approach me, I will respond accordingly. And he says, everybody's interacting with me. Every entity in this world, because they're all my very dear parts and parcels. And so, there's this exciting juncture we're all in at this very moment, because we're all human beings sitting in a room. And we're interested, I'm assuming, in making spiritual advancement. That's why we're here. That's why I came. And the path to spiritual enlightenment and satisfaction is simple. It has to do with having a desire for it. That desire for meeting God, for coming closer, may be waylaid by a sense of doubt. When I feel that perhaps this is imaginary, then I may say, well, what else should I do in the world? Maybe I should try to plump up my 401k, but good luck with that nowadays. Or I may look into other ways of feeling satisfaction. But ultimately, the world is friendly and responsive to us. There's an intelligence behind it. There's a person behind it. Our friend Krishna is behind it. And he very kindly frustrates us in this world. Because at every turn in which I'm not looking for Krishna, I find a dead end. A way that, although it seemed like a good idea and it seems like other people got something out of it, I don't. Or I get it, and then there's some condition. The spiritual experience is unconditional because it involves us using our free will to voluntarily give ourselves to the process of devotional service. We also may be waylaid by a sense of our habit patterns, which have been ingrained for so long that although I want to do the right thing, and I'd like to, for instance, hear about Krishna, my senses drag me in another direction. And as if by force, I feel as if I'm being subjected to something that's substandard. And Arjuna inquires about this in the Bhagavad Gita, saying, what's up with that? That's in Sanskrit. It's a translation of the Sanskrit. He said, what's up with that? And Krishna said that's the force in this world called rajas that drags everybody to do things that are not good for them. Even when they know it's not good for them, they still get dragged. And they do stupid stuff. So there are a couple elements to the practice of spiritual life. One of them has to do with controlling one's senses. However, because Krishna consciousness is so compelling and it's natural, if the thrust of our spiritual practice is to think of Krishna, especially by hearing about him, then naturally our senses will come into control. And one of the best ways to hear about Krishna is to chant his names. There's a mantra that's going around these days. I heard it last night. We were down in Palo Alto, just randomly. Somebody dropped us off there. And I heard this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, over and over and over and over. And I read up on it. I asked the welcome people at the front desk, what's this all about? They gave me a little summary. And apparently, is a mantra written in a particular form of Sanskrit. And they said it was a open form. I think they use the word vocative, although I don't know what that means. It's expressive. It's not saying anything particular. It's not declining or conjugating. It's the form of Sanskrit where you're just expressing. Vocative means you're just saying it, like, yeah, I'm just saying. So this has been offered in the present age that we're in as a means for self-realization. And if one can begin one can begin one's progress in realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who I've been describing as our friend, by chanting and hearing this mantra. And because it's a mantra and it's open, much of one's advancement depends on one's attitude in chanting it. Because anyone can chant it in any mood. And last night, when I observed the chanting, I saw that quite a few people walking by also chanted, but they had different moods or attitudes in chanting it. I think some were just joking around, because the young people, especially teenagers, when they're in a group, especially if it's boys and girls together, somebody likes to show off. And so walking by, I saw one such teenager who was showing off by chanting as he walked past, in imitation, and for some comic relief for his friends, and maybe a sense of, look, I can interact with the world in any way I want. And that's an attitude. And there are other attitudes also, although I didn't see it last night. I have seen previously when people came and said, "Who let you guys in here? And could you turn it down a little bit?" And then there's a recognition of something that is in the Srimad Bhagavatam for those who are on the spiritual path and who chant and listen to the mantra. And that is that it's not a verisimilitude, that it seems like the name is naming somebody in the spiritual world and therefore there's a sense that it's spiritual. It's directly spiritual. Because in the spiritual world, everything's absolute. And therefore the name and the named are the same. So when one says Hare Krishna, then Krishna is directly present in his name. And if one then, who has some information, the kind of information that we've been discussing just preliminarily today from the Bhagavad Gita about how we have a relationship with the Supreme Person, and then there's a sense that he's responsive to everything I think and do and how I feel. And then we chant. Then it becomes extremely effective because Krishna responds to our saying his name, but he especially responds to the mood in which we say it. This is a lesson taught by Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most recent incarnation of Krishna in this world. Krishna came and gave many philosophical thoughts, and not many people were able to practically employ them in their lives. So he came back later, and very recently, in fact, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in that manifestation, or avatar, Krishna coming to the world, he taught that the chanting of Hare Krishna in a mood of prayer is the best way to elevate oneself from absorption in matter, which happens quite automatically, unless one has something better to do. And he taught that if you take this up as your primary practice, you'll notice that you'll gain benefits from this that'll help you spiritually. Within the chanting and hearing, with not just an open mind, although that's a good place to start, but also with a sincere heart and prayerfully chanting, you'll naturally get knowledge. And the essence of knowledge is to understand the difference between yourself and your body. And you also will get a sense of detachment. And remember, I mentioned a few minutes ago about the conundrum of being impelled to take up sense activities that seem stupid, but still being forced to do them. You remember when I said that? Yes. Only 3 people. Well, you won't have that anymore. By the power of chanting Hare Krishna mantra, you develop called virakti, or a sense of disinterest in activities that used to be interesting or used to fill your time. You have something better to do. The highest kind of renunciation, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, is to have somewhere better to be all the time. And one who takes up the chanting Hare Krishna and also at the same time reads Bhagavad Gita every day will find this mixture incomparable in elevating oneself in mood, in knowledge, and in the ability to control your senses, and in a sense of in a way of developing happiness. So our founder, Srila Prabhupada, who comes in a long line of teachers who represent the original teacher of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, and who represent what Krishna taught and has taught over eons, recommends this process. I should say prescribes, because then it becomes more pointed, as if you went to a physician that you trust, and then when you get the prescription, you follow it. Right? Say yes. I have friends who get a prescription and they don't follow it. And then they wonder what happened. Then they blame the doctor and go ask for something different. Don't do that. Yeah, seriously. He'd always ask. He'd tell the doctor, give me antibiotics. Doctor say, you don't need antibiotics. I said, no, you give me antibiotics. I don't know why they gave him antibiotics, but he'd take them and then he'd go back and say, it didn't work. Better to find out what the prescription is from an authorized source, a doctor who knows what he or she is doing, and then take the prescription meticulously. Otherwise, the controlled experiment may confound you. So if you take a bunch of things at once, you'll never know what cured you. Nonetheless, the chanting of Hare Krishna is such a powerful medicine that we will notice the difference. And we also see it in others. In fact, oftentimes when people begin chanting Hare Krishna, they retire from doing stupid stuff. And people then say, you've always done stupid stuff. So why do you stop doing stupid stuff now? After all, we're doing stupid stuff. Can't you join us for doing more stupid stuff? And the answer is, well, I'd love to do stupid stuff with you, but I got a better place to be right now. And tomorrow and the next day. One may stealthily and very intelligently skate through the traps of the material world by taking up such a path. Oh, what a hero that would be, to be able to overcome the traps of this material world and actually skate scot-free out of the material world and overcome the anomalies of birth, death, old age, and disease, which are quite contrary to our original consciousness. So that's why we're here. It's a simple assembly. We're just sitting in a room, basically. But we have the teachings that we've, at least those of us who have read them carefully for ourselves, they're vetted by our own observation. These are not ordinary self-help books. They're divinely inspired. One may say, well, everyone says that about a particular literature, but we ask everyone to do their due diligence. That's why we put out tables all over the city and say, read these books and just see for yourself. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Americans, especially me, pronounce T's as D's. It's really lazy, I hate it. Bhagavad Gita. And he says, Raja Vijaya Rajaguyam, Pavitramidam Uttamam, Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam, Susukam Kartamavyam. In this verse, Krishna says, this is the best knowledge you're going to get anywhere. You could pay for an education at where? Huh? Stanford, UC Berkeley, MIT. Who's in MIT? MIT. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gopal and Ram at MIT. Harvard. Come on, don't you want to say your own school? You think I'm going to ridicule you or something? No. Raja Vidya Rajaguyam. You should get a good education. It's a smart idea to go to the best school you can, especially since you got all A's through your whole childhood because you have diligent parents, so take advantage of it. Fine. Raja Vidya Rajaguyam, but there's the king of all knowledge, which is the knowledge that informs us of who we really are. And even the most educated from bygone ages, like Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, when they approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as their guru, said, we know Persian, we know Sanskrit, there's 6 other languages, plus they were just fluent in every aspect of life, even so much so that they could interact with commoners, because at that time they were part of the royalty, in that they were part of the executive branch of the kingdom, and they could interact with anybody and everyone. And when they approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, not out of artificial humility, but realizing the ocean of intelligence and mercy that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, they said, we don't know anything. Please tell us who we are. And Krishna, Raja Vijaya Rajaguyam, he says, for most people it's a secret. Even though we give it out on street corners, it's still a secret until you have an inkling to inquire. And then Krishna within the heart reveals the knowledge not just from within the heart, but from within the pages of the Bhagavad Gita. I read some comment today, somebody said, oh no, but all this book distribution books, you're supposed to just talk to people directly. Yeah, we know that, but writing is speech abstracted and it gets reconstituted as soon as you read it to yourself or to anybody else. So, Raja Vidya means king of knowledge. Raja Guyam, it's secret. It's the most secret of all secret. And Pratyaksha Dharmya means that it is directly experienced. And one who takes up the practice of chanting Hare Krishna and reading Bhagavad Gita every day, just these two things. If you only do two things, just do these two, then knowledge, detachment, and an awareness of Krishna on every page of the Bhagavad Gita and every mantra of the Hare Krishna mantra, as well as everywhere in the world. Everywhere you look, you'll see Krishna for yourself. And you'll, as I already mentioned, feel detachment, which is uncanny because nobody can do that. People try for renunciation. There are many programs to help people get free from addictions, and I do recommend those programs, but even they say that you need something higher. For instance, in 12-step, there's a sense of you have to find your higher power. It's not just the steps. You have to work the program, yes, but you also have to find a higher power. So Bhagavad Gita has that. The process of devotional service is simple, and it's really cool too because it's joyfully performed. Krishna says, "Susukam kartamavyam." It's not a philosophy with a bunch of holes in it. It's comprehensive. In fact, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu told me that, and he's a perfect person to teach Bhagavad Gita because he can answer all questions in very interesting ways, and he's really smart, and he dedicates his life to studying the Bhagavad Gita so he can explain it to other people. And one could say he has all the answers. So he was saying that, I met him in GEV. He said there's this preacher, I won't mention which denomination, but it's a denomination. Somebody's involved in a religious process somewhere, and one of his main thrusts is to point out the defects in every other religious process in the world except his own. And when somebody brought up the Hare Krishnas, he said, he said, they have an answer for everything, but they're still going to hell. Raja Vidya, it's the king of knowledge. There is an answer for everything in the Bhagavad Gita. Raja Kuyam, it's secret because people don't want to know. And you can't wake up a person who's pretending to sleep. Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavitram Idamuttamam. It means it purifies when you get this knowledge. Pratyaksha Avagamam Dharmyam means it's the perfection of religion because you experience it directly. Susukam Kartamavyam, and it's a lot of fun. Because I think Cyndi Lauper said it best in the 1980s, the living entities just want to have fun. It means anandamaya abhyasat, we're happiness, fun-seeking by nature, right? Say yes, or you can't come to the dance party or the prasadam afterwards. And so Krishna consciousness is the cleanest fun that you can find anywhere because it's above the modes of nature. It's not fun where you want your money back the next day or you wish you hadn't done it. You're always glad you did it because you feel elevated. You get all the benefits of the good practice of Krishna consciousness, singing, dancing, drama, art, food. Did I mention food? Association with others, and the wherewithal to engage everything that one has for a higher cause, meaning that it doesn't mean living an artificial lifestyle of militant renunciation, depriving the senses of their food to prove a point that you're stronger than they are. And by the way, they do come back later and want their pound of flesh, as from Shakespeare. So it doesn't work anyway. So that's the system of Krishna consciousness. And if we like, we can try chanting Hare Krishna. Would you like to try? Yes. Okay. Tradition of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we have a couple of minutes for questions and answers. Only thing tonight, I'll give $100 for a stupid or bad question. Let me check it if I have it. You can try. Ask a question that you think would expand the conversation in any detail that you heard tonight and that would give more information. Okay, we have our first contestant.
So you were talking about the importance of our attitude when we chant. So I was wondering if you had any recommendations for how we can recalibrate that attitude before we begin our chanting.
Be sincere. If you're sincere, then all good things will come. Sincere means don't have any ulterior motive. Just be, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter, one who offers service for service with no expectation in return. That's a winning attitude for sure. And also, you could have the attitude that I'm helpless, I'm the runt of the litter, I got left behind, I'm a mercy case, please help me. And a third one could be, please engage me in your service. I'm lost in this world, I need your help. What a great question. A little harder because it means I don't have to pay him $100. Okay. We have extra funds, he said, so we're upping it to $200 for a bad or a stupid question. Okay, who else would like to ask a question to illuminate? Yes, please go ahead, Yashoda. Here comes the microphone all the way back to you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful session today. I remember you mentioned that Krishna is a person and he responds to the prayers. So when Krishna responds, there are certain ways which appear unfavorable to us. Like Krishna's response may not be as what I was expecting because he has something better in his mind for us, a better plan, or the timing of his response is different because the timing for the fruits is not yet ripe yet, right? So how do we develop that tolerance and be patient to know that Krishna's response may be coming at the right time, in the right way for us?
Just be a little open-minded. Yeah, be open-minded. If you accept the principle of Krishna, which if you don't, then at least for the time being, accept that he's all-powerful and all-merciful, and accept on a theoretical basis, and then base it on that, be open-minded, that he'll do the right thing. People will respect you highly for that too. Anybody who's around you, if even theoretically you accept, and of course it's not theoretical, it's true, but even if you take the Bhagavad Gita and take Krishna at his word, that he's your best well-wisher, he knows everything that's going on, everything about you, and you live your life like that, boy, you'll really stand out. Because most people complain about everything, and they're worried about everything, and even, I noticed a really excellent class, the Devakinandan attorney from Singapore gave class in Mayapur, and he was asked a question about astrology and other ways of kind of getting an understanding of what's going to happen to me, why is certain things happening to me. And he said, well, the devotee was asking, it was Shukadev Maharaj, she was saying, what is that necessary for devotees to do that? And in a very compassionate, shastric way, he explained why it's not absolutely necessary for us, but he said devotees do it anyway, oftentimes because even though they trust Krishna, they still want to try to alleviate the pain and the onslaught of what's happening right now. And it's quite understandable that you get a little nervous about what's happening in this material world, but if you can take Bhagavad Gita to heart, which is best done by reading it regularly, and just take Krishna, as Prabhupada recommends in the introduction, when you read this book, and he's speaking to perhaps a newcomer or anybody else, but I say perhaps because he asked mass distribute this book and somebody might get it and then open it and say, okay, at least theoretically for now, accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a little bit of a trick, because once you do that, it's really hard to go back. And nonetheless, if you can do that, and from moment to moment when there are ways in which you feel a little bit challenged, then be open-minded to Krishna working in his own way. I saved a video to my phone. I finally found it again because I saw it once a long time ago, and then I didn't do anything about it, and then I figured out how to save stuff. So I saved it, and it's this guy walking down a city street, and there's some guy at a flower stand, and as this man is walking by, he just pushes him out of the way, and the guy goes flying into the flowers. And then there's a series where he's going down, there's a little kid running out of the door, and he trips him. This guy trips him because the kid's running after his ball, and he trips him. So then you see that the guy that flew into the flower stand, there was a car about to go down the sidewalk, and he would have got hit. And the little kid, he also was getting hit by a car. And in the series, then you see these types of incidents happening and what's actually behind it. And that's the vision that we can get from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. But I say, just on a practical level, if you pray to Krishna, the human body was built for prayer. It's especially what it's made for. So you do this. Do this. How do you feel now? A lot safer, right? It's like a lightning rod, just right straight from Krishna to your heart. And if you pray on it and ask, like, what's going on? When's this going to happen or not happen, and so forth? Krishna reciprocates from within the heart. Nirkul is going to add something to that.
Thank you. In my experience, I think we all have opportunities and realizations that if we look back in our lives, if we're in a situation where we're praying to Krishna for something to help us, we can look back in our lives and see where he did answer our prayers without maybe even us praying for it. So sometimes it helps to be reflective during those times and remember the times that we did pray to Krishna and he answered our prayers, or, wow, I wanted something, I wasn't praying for it, and I can see Krishna's plan was so much better. So even young people have those experiences. All of us, I believe, have those experiences, and it helps to remember them during those times when we're praying for a good job or getting into school or something that way. That remember the times that we know Krishna saved us or took better care of us than we could even imagine.
Thank you. And I think it's helpful to try to stay alive as long as possible. Because along with your observation, there's a way in which the longer you live, the more you see how things play out.
Yeah.
And there may seem like asymmetry to the world, that why is such and such getting away with this? But everything balances out. There's not so much that we have to meddle with, and nor are there a lot of levers of power that we have in this world, except for taking shelter of Krishna. That's one of the ultimate messages of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, that you can try to adjust individually, but it's foolhardy, because he said, I'm behind everything anyway. So you might as well go straight to me. And at the end, he just gives this proclamation, emancipation proclamation, that he signs at the bottom, and he says, look it, just give up everything, surrender to me, I'll just take care of it. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Yeah, so the longer you can stay alive and observe how what goes around comes around, and how Krishna does fulfill your desires. It's realized that way, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. We just took a break, and we were talking a lot, because it's so important to take stock of what's happened to your life, what's happening now. And it's startling sometimes at intervals the class must just got out, huh? Okay, I'll be brief. There's a way in which we have to take stock of what's happening in our lives, where we are, where we've been. It can be quite startling to look up all of a sudden and say, oh, look where we are now. And in proportion to how much time one might have in the world, you find that there's maybe less time than you thought. Okay, yes. Okay, Prikishori, you got the mic, and
May I share a reflection?
all power goes to the person who holds the mic.
I didn't particularly have a question, but it was a reflection on what you said about prescription. I recently had an experience of having certain symptoms, and I thought, let me Google search this, let me chat GPT it, and I will make myself feel better. But when I met the doctor, she very strongly and particularly said, do this, and then do this. And there was this moment where my mind completely shut down, and I just believed it. And the self-doubt and the speculation was set aside, and I was able to trust and surrender. So I was reflecting on how sometimes in my own Krishna consciousness, I feel like I need to spice it up, and maybe I should do this versus that. And, our creativity can turn into confusion. And so when we stick to the prescription, we're liberated from all of that, and the process just does whatever it does without us, without our mind or egos interfering. So I really liked what you said.
Oh, thank you. In other words, if all else fails, follow directions. Thanks, Prikishori. Bali, Prabhu.
I think in the same connection as you are giving the talk about the faith and the response of Krishna, right? So Prabhupada actually told a story, and he said there is an old lady, she has one son, she used to go to the school, and one day the teacher asked, everybody needs to get something for the potluck. So then he asked the young man what he wants to bring, because he doesn't know. He said, yogurt. Then he went to his mom and said, we need to, because there is a potluck. He said, we are so poor, we can't give it. Then he said, go and ask Dinabandhu. Dinabandhu is in the jungle. So he asked Dinabandhu, give me yogurt for these things. So Dinabandhu came and gave him a little lota of yogurt. And then next day, everybody bought for a big feast. And he got a little bit, and the teacher was sitting. Oh, you got this much for the people? Then he likely, are you sure you got for this much? Fell down. See, the pot fell down, and again it got up because it is a holding pot. Again it's filled with yogurt. Then he filled out, again it is filled with yogurt. So that is the mercy of Dinabandhu. So Prabhupada says, yes, if you have a really sincere faith like Dhruva Maharaj and all, Krishna reciprocates. But sometimes we pray ourselves, but we don't have really faith in the outcome of the world, of the Lord. That's why it doesn't reciprocate. So I think bottom line is faith is the ingredient.
Yeah, that's Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, "Yoga kshema mahamyaham." I'll carry what you lack, preserve what you have. And again, it's a relationship. So it may take some time to notice that even when Krishna withholds something from us that we expected, that's also a kind of reciprocation for the position we're in at the time, and we may be really thankful later when we can see the result of it. But it's a really heartwarming story because it's true that Krishna consciousness is a real life of abundance. There's no lack of anything when one is Krishna conscious. In the material world, when I'm thinking of arranging the material world in such a way that I can be happy, it always comes up short, and I'm never satisfied. But depending on Krishna, one finds that he gives more than one could possibly imagine. One of his names is Vanjhatita, which means that he fulfills your desires beyond what you could expect, or beyond what you desired. He knows how to give you more. There was one last question, and then we're finite. Fine. Terminado. Owarimashita. Ho gaya. Tech support. There we go.
In battlefield of Kurukshetra, where Krishna was telling Arjuna that you should fight this war, this is your duty right now. So think of me and fight. Right now, Krishna is not with us in our battles, right? And in material world, where we are fulfilling our material duties, how do we know that either this is a trap of Maya, where it will trap us into material desires and get us into the lust and stuff like that, or Krishna is telling us to fight and do our duties, which will eventually fulfill our Krishna consciousness?
Well, I give you an answer from the Bhagavatam, which was given by Prabhupada Yogendra. He said, Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jignasu Shre Uttamam Shabde Parichanishnatam Brahman Upashramashrayam. And that starts with a therefore. Before that, there's a description of the confusion in the material world. And Prabhupada Yogendra says, get yourself an attorney. You know, when you don't know what the legal implications of something are, don't try to represent yourself in court. You go get an attorney. And best if you get a really good one. A good attorney knows the law, and a great attorney knows the judge. And that's how the world works, and that's how the spiritual world works also. So if you want to know how to get out of difficulty, Prabhupada Yogendra says, find yourself a spiritual attorney. And what's the qualification? That person is Shabde Paritanishna, study the law books. They know the spiritual science backwards and forwards. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that's the kind of person that you want to go to. They've experienced it, and there are also the other metaphor for that kind of a guide is given by Krishna, also in the 11th canto. I quoted it last week. Last week. Nrideham adyam sulabham sadulabham plavam sukalpam guru karnadaram means that, like a sea captain, they're salty. They've been through it. They've followed it. They've practiced it. They've got years of sadhana, and they can tell you they've seen a million times how what goes around comes around and how it works. And they've also lived their life. Like Prabhupada, he lived his life. When he came to America at 69 years of age, he had had children. He had been involved in political movements. He had had a business, lost a business. Anybody here lost a business before? You ever lost a lot of money recently. Yeah. So there's, when you go through all that and your heart sinks and it comes back up and then you start realizing what Krishna said is true, plus, you've stuck to the process, you have vijnanam, or realized knowledge. And that's the kind of person you want to ask. That's who I ask. When I'm trying to figure things out, I go to people, they know the Shastra in and out, plus they're just solid in everything that they do, and I trust them. So I say, what do you think? And when I discuss it with them, then I get my bearings straight. So that's the way to find it through life. And Krishna is there in the Bhagavad Gita, but he's also there in his representatives. That's from 11th canto. Uddhava says, Naivo payantya pachitin kavayasthavesha brahma yushapi kridim rida mudasvaranta yontarbahis tanubhatam ashubhan vadunvan acharya chaitya vapusha swakatim vyanakti. He says, you're on the outside as the acharya. Acharya means somebody showing by example. How do you do this? You got to have like some example of somebody. And then on the inside said, you're directing me as well. And so we're never without guidance. And Prabhupada brings that up in the verse I quoted at the very beginning of class, Tesham Satati Yuktanam, that if you're sincere and you try, Krishna always gives you instruction from within your heart. It never fails. And so just take shelter of Krishna and chant Hare Krishna non-stop. That means 24/7. Don't stop chanting Hare Krishna. Okay? Yes. Say yes. Yes. See how easy that is? So now we're going to have our famous Hare Krishna dance party. People have been calling from all over the country asking about that. And the secret's in the floor. This is real wood floor. And we're going to roll up the carpets, put away the seats, and we're going to stand up here on the dance floor, make a little room for the harmonium player, sits right in the middle. One of these days we're going to get a tower for the harmoniist to sit on. But for now, just be careful. Don't block the harmonium player. Usually the women are on this side, men are on that side, and feel free to dance because Hare Krishna is a dancing movement. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you back here in 2 minutes. Hare Krishna.